Welcome on Neuroscience Unplugged, where we translate neuroscience finding into real life. And today we've got Aiman, who is a psychology student. She is a health and wellness copywriter and the co-founder of Heal and Bloom, which is a learning community for introverts who want to grow without burning out. Through her writing, she helps wellness brands communicate with more clarity, care, and credibility. I know that you started out with a really deep interest in biology and wanted to become a doctor, but you then shifted into copywriting. What I'm really intrigued to find out is, from a practical perspective, if somebody was perhaps going through a similar transition, how would you advise them to stay grounded during this time? Because what you decided to do was a complete shift, right? And so to keep calm, keep a focused mind, how did you manage that?
So actually, this was 10 years ago. I was basically a teenager. Like, I opted for biology in high school. I was a teenager back then. So I was interested in writing, but back then I didn't know that, I could make a career out of it, or there is this opportunity. I was also interested in biology and I was like studying very hard, but then my health issues and everything came up and I couldn't clear the entrance. So I did not want to take a gap year. Like many people end up taking 1 year, 2 year to do the exam again, but I was like, no, I have to just get enrolled in college, and I got enrolled in the community. I did not leave my parents or anything. So that was kind of a difficult moment because all your friends are going to different cities for college, because you were also hardworking, so that was tough. But then I just decided to learn. I got enrolled in actually journalism and mass communication. So I have made a lot of pivots, I would say, in my career, because I had heard that you can learn content writing in journalism. So I got enrolled there, and I did not quite fit in, and I was like, I'm an introvert, so, but I was like very dedicated. And in the first year in my college itself, I got my first client. And then by the end of the year, like when my college was about to get over, it was like a full-time thing for me, like the copywriting. And then again, I had like one gap year after that. And then I got enrolled in master's psychology.
What would you say drew you to psychology?
Yeah, so when I opted for biology, I was interested in the human mind and human body and everything. But back then, I didn't know that this is how my path was going to unfold. I would become interested in psychology. Like, this was not my plan. So, as I got into copywriting, I started learning about, obviously, copywriting has a lot to do with psychology. So, I started learning about it and I started feeling passionate about it. And I also met people who were like deep into the healing game and therapy and healing and everything. And I was like, I had many aha moments, and kind of moments in which you're like, your life turns upside down. The kind of people you meet, and you're like, what's that kind of stuff that happened? And then I was like, I have to get enrolled in masters as well. I actually took a gap year, and that time I was not even doing copywriting and not even studying or anything. Like, I would say there is a lot of curves. You scale, you go back to zero, things like that. Yeah.
It sounds like the way that you've managed to stay grounded through all these different transitions that have been feeling right for you is by listening to what feels into your sense of, this is for me, this is where I belong, essentially. Now, I know that we spoke about there were inner whispers. Your internal compass was essentially showing you the way. And you also mentioned about signals in your body as well. Do you mind just sharing a bit about that from a perspective that if somebody was listening and they were perhaps experiencing similar symptoms or on a similar journey, they may understand how to work through those?
Yeah, so actually there was also a point came in my copywriting journey when I started struggling with my eyes. The dry eye problem came. And back then I was like working hard, and just I had a lot in my plate and I could not handle. And then it kind of came a point where, just being able to create became a privilege for me, because I would not have the capacity to work with clients because of, all the past trauma resurfacing and also my health issues. So those points, I think the past 2 years were like that. I mostly went inward, and now I'm ready to create in the outer world.
It sounds like you've really chosen a journey which allows you to explore past experiences which have come up, essentially, which need healing, because a lot of people on a similar journey will just push things down in the subconscious and ignore it. and will continue on the path that they've perhaps had goals for the last 10 years, regardless of what feels right for them?
No, I just like to dig deep. I have done journaling a lot, like consistently for 5 years. I was like, back then, I realized that in the business journey, it's like never ending chase, right? Never ending, like the goal and the milestone. So I was like that. I was in the chase, but then I realized that maybe I'm chasing goals that are not mine, and things like that. So there was a lot of discovery. I discovered my authentic self, and a lot of things happened in the journey, and it was all fun, and I'm just glad that I'm able to work again on this thing.
So it sounds like journaling became a habit of yours. Is that something that you built over time? Because we know from a neuroscience perspective, building habits is often what can help sustain a sense of resilience. Would you say that that was something of a staple in your ritual to allow you to come back to self?
Yeah, so actually, because I wanted to become a better writer, I had to do journaling, and I started it in 2020, and it also helped me with grounding, so I started swearing by it. Right now I'm not doing like the physical paper kind of, because I also got into creative journaling and I started enjoying it more. And it's like you get bored of things sometimes. So but five years were like consistent, and I have got a lot of them in my almira. Like it's like 5 years I recorded, 5 years of my life.
That is definitely a consistent habit that's kept you grounded. 5 years is a long time. You're trying creative journaling now as well. As you said it, your whole face just lit up. I've seen your work and it's incredible. It's so inviting. And are there parts that you've kept personal to yourself as well?
Yeah, so I would say, like, in the beginning, I struggled with vulnerability, like sharing what is vulnerable, even openly talking about my health issues or anything. I remember in 2021, I could not talk about my health issues on Instagram. I just deleted that post right away. But over time, you build that muscle. You are like, okay, you are just sharing, it's helping people, it's not something to fear about. And also, I had like launches, ebook launches and things, and those also brought up a lot of wounds, and yeah, so those things also happened.
So you faced the fear instead
Yeah, and
of,
I
as
had
you
people.
said, you could have kept it deleted, right? No one would have known.
So I think it's a muscle, and now these days it's also more and more people are talking, openly talking about their struggles. And I would say 5 years ago it was not like that. Remember, no one was crying in front of camera on Instagram, remember?
Yes, vulnerability was definitely not a skill to be showcasing in social media. I think it's made it okay to acknowledge that we have emotions and that we're humans and we have spectrums. And some days we do just feel like crap. And some days we do just want to cry for no reason. And it's okay. And often society, it's a saying that we have in the UK, when someone's crying, you're like, oh, don't cry, don't cry. And you're patting them on the back and you're giving them tissues to signal like, stop, you shouldn't cry, right? So subconsciously, you always think, oh, I better not cry in public because people are going to stop me. So that was a really interesting point, that what us British people generally do in our way of comforting people. We're like, no, stop crying. You're telling somebody to stop acknowledging their emotions.
Normal in every culture, like no one is encouraged to cry. It's
Is
a
it the
new
same in
new
yours
thing.
as well?
Yeah, it's a new thing, I would say.
I know that you'd gone viral on Substack, so it meant that people are also feeling into the vulnerability of what you're sharing, right? They're resonating. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to perhaps follow your work. They wouldn't want to engage with you because they're finding someone who has become a beacon for them to say,
Yeah,
here's
I
someone who's
think,
successful.
Substack is like that. Mostly people are sharing their journal entries, and engagement is really good there. So it's a new platform, and I'm enjoying it.
I can tell from your writing that there's a lot of love written. You're not forcing your advice or guidance onto others. You're saying, this is what's worked for me. This is what the science says. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't, but here's a platform to show you how.
Like, I remember in 2021, I also had a newsletter, like on a different platform, and I loved sharing it, but I could not keep up with sharing it for long term because I had clients work and everything. But now I have become more efficient, so it's fun.
So it's become part of your work process. And it sounds like, journaling, creative journaling, writing in the previous platform, writing is Substack. You need to have emotional clarity to write with focus and to understand what it is perhaps you are trying to create and put out in the world. You have to essentially grip the reader for them to want to continue reading in a way that speaks to them and, in terms of who your audience, you don't know, right? You're just writing to the virtual world and then holding space for whoever comes in. Now, it takes a certain amount of clarity from an emotional perspective to be able to have that know-how without knowing your demographics, without knowing who you're writing for. It feels for me that you're writing for yourself and you're
Yeah, I
creating for
write for my
yourself.
past self. I write for a version of me. And there is a version of me that exists in everyone. Like everyone is kind of struggling. If you might have heard
Absolutely.
like the law of oneness. Yeah. So I basically serve past versions of me. Even my present me, like I recently wrote Becoming Your Own Bestie, and I had this gap. Okay, I am my own bestie. I'm not my mind, I'm my bestie.
It sounds like you're writing for past versions of yourself, future versions of yourself, where you perhaps didn't have a bestie Aiman version, where you could perhaps lean on them and seek guidance. So you're essentially creating that and saying, okay, this is what I need. You had created 5 years of your life through journaling, which is essentially 5 years times all the future and past and present lives that are going to need that. Because whenever you do need to call on that Aiman bestie, you've got those writings there. For people who perhaps are going through similar struggles that you may have described in your Substack letters, who don't necessarily have the resilience yet that you have managed to nurture throughout your life, and perhaps they don't have a psychology or neuroscience insight as to how the mind works and how they can better themselves and resolve past trauma, what would you suggest they do to start their journey?
So like till 2022, I could not, differentiate between the two voices in my head. Like now I can, the loud voice and the calm. So because I got into this personal development journey and journaling, and not only journaling, I remember I once also did, 75 heart challenge. Have you heard of it? Yeah, it's very popular in the personal growth space. And that's when, when I was like, my mind is telling me you cannot do it. And I'm like, still doing it. And my mind is telling me you cannot work out. And that's when I started feeling really powerful. And I'm like, oh God. And that was like a really kind of a self discovery journey that happened in 2022. And since then, it's been like highs and lows. And yeah, sometimes identifying with your mind because you're human. And sometimes, okay, I'm powerful.
You describe not only a personal growth journey, it's also an entrepreneurial journey. So you essentially have got two paths parallel, and they're both very topsy-turvy. They will take any direction. It is a very unknown direction. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's on an even plateau. Sometimes you're standing at the cliff's edge and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to jump anyway and take that leap of faith, right? They're very similar journeys, which is why I think a lot of entrepreneurs naturally grow should they decide to stay in that space. Because a lot of time when you're in the entrepreneurial space and you're creating a business, when perhaps things have plateaued or perhaps when things are at the lowest, that's when a lot of entrepreneurs struggle to stay in that space. And this is when they quit. And of course, like you said, you chose to explore that further. You didn't let your mind take over. You said, I'm going to fight this. And it allowed you to then grow entrepreneurially, but also in your personal growth stage. For the listeners, would you mind describing the challenge that you did?
75 Hut Challenge. Yeah, so it's by, I think, Andy Frisella. His name is, the creator of the 75 Hut Challenge. It is basically wellness focused, fitness focused. Sorry, fitness. So in the past, I was like in the hustle, the first 2 years of my entrepreneurial journey. And then, I started having health issues, dry eye problem and other things. I also battled PCOD, PCOD. So those things started surfacing, and I had to really go deep for my health and wellness because I'm the only one making these things. And if my mind and body is not working well, then I cannot create things. That's when I really, decided to take my health seriously, and I started eating well and working out. That was like the first time in my life I was actually showing up for myself like that and showing up consistently. That was the first time in my life. And I kind of started having self discovery because, I was long identifying with my introvert persona, and all of a sudden I'm confident. All of a sudden I'm initiating conversation with the strangers. I used to go to college and then all of a sudden I'm confident. The confidence I'm building here, you know, in the digital space, it was showing in real life, and people are also complimenting me like, you have changed, everything was showing. So it was a beautiful journey, 2022. So it was like highs, a journey of highs. I would say basically I met my inner child, you know and I was like, really, I started feeling confident and beautiful and everything. But then 2023 was like shit.
You're comparing a time where you decided to invest in yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. You reap the benefits in the virtual world, but also the real world as well. And
Yeah.
then the following year, it sounds like it felt like crap.
For the longest time, I felt like crap. But in 2022, when I started working on it, I felt real joy, happiness, fulfillment. I would say even bliss state, those kind of feelings. And, we as humans kind of get attached to joy. So I kind of got attached, and 2023 was like, it's just how the body operates. When you are ready, the emotions started surfacing. So 2023, I learned to feel my feelings, like the negative feelings. And in 2022, I learned to feel the positive feelings.
It sounds like you accepted, as humans, we're, dual purposed. We do have our light and our shadow selves. And like you said, we are very much attached to joy, feeling bliss and content. And that's often where the dopamine rush comes into, right? That instant gratification of feeling great. And I love that you did lean into that the following year, because that can screw up your life in monstrous ways without you thinking. So if you're not choosing to work through those, especially when things come to the surface, as you said, because it sounds like you created a very safe space for yourself. Your past self felt safe to say, okay, fine. You know what, Aiman? We're ready to release everything that's come up now.
Yeah, exactly why I had to take gap year that year, because a lot was coming up and I didn't have a space to work or anything.
But it often, when we think about trauma, the reason things do come up and resurface is because your body is feeling safe to say, now, let's do it. Okay, you're not running, you're not fearful, you're not
Yeah,
running
but
on,
in 2023,
adrenaline.
I didn't know that. Now I know this. Back then, I didn't know that. So I was resisting and resisting, but it's still coming. It's still coming.
So I wanna touch on that. When you said you were resisting and it's still coming up, what did that look like for you? Like, did it come up physically? Did it come emotionally?
Yeah, emotionally, I would not stop crying. So it was like teenage year stuff resurfacing. It happens to every human being, but I didn't know. I was only 23. In 2023, I was 23. So I didn't know that this happens. So, but then I, realized that this happens with every adult. And also kind of realized like why my mom acted the way she did. She would also go into phases, live in the past. In my teenage years, I could not understand that.
And there lies what I class as somebody who's committed to resilience. You said yourself during that time, you weren't aware of what you know now, but yet you still chose to work through it. So you are Eamon, somebody who, without prior knowledge of what was going on, you still decided to fight and stand up and go through everything you're going through. And you also realized about people around you, as you said, your mum. So I know there's going to be a lot of listeners who perhaps are in that space where they don't have a clue why these things are coming up and why they're feeling the way that they feel. And you said it came up in your emotions where you were crying a lot.
And also, I was getting mad. I was shouting and fighting.
So the aggression was coming up as well, and it was apparent to you. And that's obviously something that you can observe now and say, this is what happened in hindsight. It sounds like there will have been times when you were very emotionally drained during this time as well. What did you do?
Very tough times, but eventually I kind of got used to feeling the feelings. I would also feel love a lot. Yeah, like with the negative feelings. Like I would, it was kind of like awakening. I used to feel like my mom does not care about me, but I kind of started to feel like okay, she does.
She just has a different way of showing it. So not only in your time of emotional need did you work through your own challenges, you were also observing your mum as well and understanding from a point of view that she does love you. And that takes a different level of resilience, because often when you're going through a journey of resolving trauma, you can become quite isolated and you become quite self-focused because you're needing to stay safe. That's what the brain does, right? It doesn't really care much about what's going on around you. So that's what I want to highlight when you said love. Would you mind describing that a bit more so that others perhaps would be able to lean into the same space as well for
So
themselves?
I was feeling loved, and that was kind of a new feeling. When you are used to feeling unloved, and all of a sudden you see people caring about you, you see people, just little things would just make you feel a lot of loved, and that would make you cry a lot.
So you felt, would you say, grateful that you
Yeah.
had all this love in your life and your system was just like, what? Sounds like a release is what you're feeling. That everything you're going through, you felt very fortunate that you had all these people doing all these beautiful things for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I also had friends and I made friends a lot. Yeah, like I was introverted kind of person, but then in 2022 and 2023, I was like, I made friends and they were like showing up for me and I just felt loved.
I love that. I love that. And Aiman, I want to ask you about your ancestry. Would you say that anywhere down the line that you know of, ancestrally, they've had to nurture a lot of resilience in their lives? Family members, it could be like your parents, it could be, or grandparents, great grandparents, it could be uncles, anyone in your family line. It doesn't necessarily have to be bloodline, just who has needed to build resilience in their lives because they've had to go through different challenges. Are you
Yeah,
aware of
I
that,
think
anyone?
all my ancestors. Not everyone has their own battle, and especially my mom. When my grandma passed away in 2010, so I also had to feel that feeling of grief. When I started my healing journey, it came all of a sudden, and I wasn't even aware. Like when my grandma passed in 2010, we went on with our lives and everything, and my mom kind of went into survival. And back then, I didn't know that she's in survival mode. And when I started my healing journey, I kind of realized that no one has felt that grief. No one has taken the time to feel those feelings. So it was kind of scary. You are just crying and crying, but yeah.
So you were, dealing with your own feelings and your own grief, but you also were aware that your mum was in a different state as well, having to deal with her own grief as well. And that dynamic is very different, isn't it? When it's a sibling or an offspring and a parent, and essentially you're the one who's biologically been around less on this planet for this life. You are the one having to notice and observe and perhaps go deeper into what the brain or psychologically is being demonstrated.
So actually, my mom never cried. Like as soon as I reached my teenage years, when my grandma passed away. In 2010, I was 10. So when my grandma passed away, I reached teenage years, and we just went on with her life, school, and everything. But when I reached my teenage years, the hormones and everything, and I would also notice that my mom would go into phases. In one phase, she would be like shouting and everything. In another phase, she would just live in the past and she would laugh. She would not cry. She would laugh and smile. And that was weird. No one's mother was like that. Like my friends, I would observe them, their mother was not like that. So that was like really painful for me to witness, like for our whole family, like it was complete dysfunction. But yeah, kind of we eventually got used to it.
How did it feel for you to observe this uncomfortable feeling? It sounds like you were needing to build resilience of your own against feelings
So
of
basically,
grief.
in my teen years, I would say I'm kind of the parentified daughter, because I have two siblings. So yeah, I would just observe my mother and kind of feel bad. I just wanted to escape a lot. When I could not clear the medical entrance, I felt really bad because I wanted to go somewhere else for college and I could not go. So it was bad, but now I'm like, I'm okay here as well. I'm okay living with my parents. So bad. That time it was like a lot of desperation. I tried a lot, but I could not develop the courage.
What did you do in those moments for yourself to help your mind stay
Yeah, so
calm?
basically, I have my own personal room, so that is a good thing. A lot of people don't have that. So that is like a safe space I had already. So I'm grateful for it. But sometimes, when it would get so overwhelming, I would just go outside and sit outside for hours. And I remember there was time, even in 2023, I was feeling like that because, lots of past stuff was coming. And I remember it was just so painful, kind of like, the kind when there just a point comes in your cycle when you are like, when you are getting, all the suicidal thoughts and everything. So that was coming, and I just sat near the mall, and I was like, really kind of in the rock bottom I had hit. And I have never cried in public, and crying in public is not normal, but I was about to cry. But then I kind of saw a little boy, kids were playing, and that kind of really gave me peace. And just it was, I would say, it was kind of a moment of love.
Wow. And it sounds like you recognized having the physical space was important to allow yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed to feel safe, but also being active. You physically went outside, you change your surroundings, you then observed something that made you feel so much love. Would you say that's a habit that you tend to use still now when you're feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, this year I have not done that, but in 2023 I did that a lot. Like I would just go there and sit. My healing journey started, the highs and lows were very extreme. Now
Mm.
I think I'm more of in a stable side.
You feel like your feet are a bit more balanced when both decide to hit you. Well, you've done a lot of work. You've managed to ground yourself in those moments to be able to know what works for you and which coping mechanisms serve you, right? But how do you prevent yourself from burning out long term? Because you are multi-talented and you're passionate, you said, about so many different things. You're helping so many people as well. How would you practically say is the best way to prevent burnout?
So I actually happen to burn out a lot. I think it's just how my energy operates. I just want to do a lot of things and I burn out. So I've actually burn out a lot. But I try not to. I try to go slow. But what I have learned is that this is just how my energy operates. And I feel like sometimes it's okay to burn out.
I think what it sounds like, you're aware that that's who you are. So it's not detrimental, because often when burnout
Yeah,
happens to someone and they're not
I have
aware.
tried a lot to not burn out and to go slow, but I realized that this is not how I operate. I have like a very fast-paced energy. Do you know human design? Yeah, so I am a manifesting generator.
That doesn't surprise me, Ava. That doesn't surprise me at all. But I think what it sounds like, you're aware of who you are and what you bring, and like you said, the way your brain processes. So that essentially prevents you from making it long term, where it perhaps maybe developing into chronic stress or chronic illnesses. You know that these are your symptoms. You know, maybe, okay, I've got to that point, I need to maybe slow it down. And then you come back to a more stable base as well. I think that's a really key point, because a lot of people don't recognize there's cycles of burnout. That's when, it can take, up to 6 years sometimes to get back to a safe space if you're not catching those little telltale signs in time. And it sounds like you do. So that's a credit to you and the journey you've done to say, I know myself
So
enough
I
that this
actually
happens.
had times, of difficult burnout in 2023 when I was going through a lot. And I also got a client and it kind of turned bad. Like the client had to ask for refund, because I was struggling with my health and I could not do the work properly. Like I did my best. So yeah, that time I really burned out and I was like, that has stayed with me for a long time, that pain and everything.
Well, it sounds like
Because
you have been on a
most of
journey.
my trauma and everything has related to health, my health issues. So that resurfaced, like the worst day from my teenage years resurfaced at the same time, I was not expecting.
And now you're ready. It sounds like you're ready for when perhaps challenges do face you. It sounds like you're a lot more aware physically, mentally, and emotionally of perhaps what isn't serving you and what
Yeah,
you can do
it
about
took
it as
me
well.
but it took me a lot of time, to get over that phase. That was kind of like a worst phase, I would say, of my
And look at you
entrepreneurial
now.
journey. Yeah.
Yes. I'm sure everyone as an entrepreneur on their journey will have those stories to share, right? When you're talking about it. But what I appreciate about you, Eamon, is that you didn't give up. And this is where a lot of entrepreneurs do. Their health, or for whatever reason, they then don't follow their path, and you have, and that's what I really admire about you.
Yeah, I feel it's like, I'm able to do it for long because I enjoy it. Like, even it's like if the income is not coming, even for 1 year, I can do it. So that's what
Look
keeps
at
me
that.
going.
That is resilience. I mean, this is it. Your inner resilience just sounds incredible, and this is
I think this
exactly
is
why.
exactly what sets me apart, and because I'm like, I can do it for longer than anyone. I just know that. So I don't worry.
Would you say it's stubbornness or resilience?
Yeah, both.
I think they're very, very intertwined in the research I'm doing. It's very interesting to see the people who do decide to build resilience through their challenges. And they're very much like you, they're determined. Like, I don't care what it's going to take. I'm going to do it, right? I'm going to make it happen. And I think it's credible. And, you just always do it with a smile. Even when you're sharing your journey, you could tell that it was learning for you. You didn't find it, oh my God, it's such a burden. It's like, I'm learning, I'm moving forward, which is just resilience personified, Eamon. That's who you are. And what I wanted to share with the listeners is your incredible work that you're up to now, and the space that you're working with. So would you mind telling the listeners any exciting projects that you've got upcoming that you'd like them to perhaps be a part of?
For now, I'm just focusing on the blog. I did 100 days of threads challenge. It did not quite work well for me, because I was not very consistent. But it was fun. I learned a lot and made some new friends, new connections.
And is the blog on your website?
It's on Substack, the newsletter.
Anyone listening, I implore you to subscribe to Aiman's newsletter. It really is a pocket of joy when you read it. No matter what's going on, you get lost in her writing and it's incredible. I genuinely do suggest you subscribe. And what about where people can find you, Aiman?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm basically on all platforms.
Would you have any last words of wisdom, Aiman, for listeners?
Yeah, my words of wisdom would be don't get attached to anything, highs and lows. Try to develop neutrality within your body. Feel your feelings. Everything is just so impermanent. We get attached to success, joy, or something. Nothing lasts forever.
Beautifully said. And impermanence is the only thing that's permanent in this life, right?